Okay, in some NHL and ice hockey news, Evgeni Kuznetsov has been suspended by the IIHF for 4 years for cocaine use. Yeah, this all came out during the World Championships and has actually been a slow burner in the background that hasn't really had much media attention until today. So let's go through what's happened, the background to this, and where we could go from here. So the IIHF have suspended Evgeni Kuznetsov for a violation of the WADA Code, Article 2.1, presence of a prohibited substance. Now, the WADA Code is very, very complex. It covers performance enhancing and recreational substance abuse. Now, the substance was cocaine. That's alleged to have been found in his sample that he gave to doping control on the 26th of May during the World Championships, where he won a bronze medal with Russia by doping control. Now, he was provisionally suspended about 3 weeks later on the 13th of June. So it took 3 weeks to provisionally suspend Kuznetsov for his doping violation. A B sample is not required because it's recreational drug use, not performance enhancing. So that clears up that. And that is actually in the IIHF statement that has been released today. He was then formally suspended as of this morning. The IIHF have come out and said he has been suspended for 4 years, which I actually think is a bit steep. A bit steep. I do think it's a bit steep considering other cases of high-profile sports athletes and sports stars who've been caught using recreational drugs over the years. He'll be allowed to compete again in a IIHF sanction competition in 2023 on the 12th of June because it's retroactive, so it goes back to the backdated. Now, obviously, he plays for Russia internationally. He won bronze medal at this year's World Championships. He also plays for the Washington Capitals in the NHL. And this is where it gets interesting because the NHL is not actually a IIHF sanctioned league. It has its own rules and ice surface size. So it's a different form of ice hockey, ironically. This is why I'm wearing my old Capitals jersey because a Capitals player. Now, we have seen in the past substance abuse issues in the NHL. Kuznetsov is an NHL player. A lot of people have made comparisons to the 70s, 80s and 90s and the Edmonton Oilers and the Detroit Red Wings and other teams that had players who regularly abused recreational drugs, in this case cocaine. And there are two big examples I can use of ex-players who were suspended for drug use and had issues with drug use, and that's Bob Probert and Grant Fuhr. Both of them legendary players. Both contemporaries because they played at the same time. Unfortunately, Bob Probert is no longer alive, but I've watched the documentary on Bob Probert, and yeah, drug use was more than just the Edmonton Oilers. I had this discussion last night on live stream about drug use in the NHL and especially at the Edmonton Oilers and the issues with that organisation. It's going to be interesting to see what the Washington Capitals do with Kuznetsov, considering these revelations and his suspension. Clearly, he will appeal. I have no doubt that there will be an appeal process, possibly to get the ban reduced and come clean about why this sample contained a banned substance of a recreational drug. But I also use comparisons with other sports. Now, when the channel first came about a couple of years ago, a couple of rugby league players, actually more than a couple, a fair few rugby league players in 2017 fell afoul of this very thing. Zach Hardacre over here in the UK, Ranky Chase, who's a Kiwi, a New Zealander, who plays in the UK, and several of his former Kiwi teammates who were playing in the Anzac Day test also were caught using cocaine. The suspensions that they received were less than this, but clearly the IIHF is sending a message, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the Washington Capitals do with one of their star players, because he's a key part of that team. He was a key part of that Stanley Cup winning team, and it's going to be interesting to see, where we go from here. The fact that it doesn't require a B sample because it's recreational is an interesting thing, and the fact that it did take as long as it did for the IIHF to suspend. It took a very long time. It took nearly 3 months, because that for me is too long. The length of suspension is a talking point as well, and it'll be interesting to see if the Washington Capitals take any disciplinary action against their player, considering that the NHL season doesn't start for, I think, 6 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see, if there is an appeal and if the punishment is reduced. And it's also going to be interesting to see how the Capitals respond to one of their star players having this drugs test fail. But I'm going to leave that there. Please feel free to place your comments below. It's going to be very interesting to see the reaction. I will expect an interesting reaction from NHL fans, considering the history that the NHL has had with recreational drug abuse, and it still continues. Doping controls in the NHL are weak. He's got caught in an international tournament by WADA, and WADA come down like a ton of bricks in these instances. Ice hockey is a sport that does have an issue with substance abuse for recreational. So alcohol, prescription medication, and recreational drugs. It does have a problem. It's there. It's lingering. Mike Ribeiro is another example of a player who's had issues with substance abuse over the years, and it ended his career. And as I say, Bob Probert and Grant Fuhr are two prime examples from the 80s and the 90s when allegations were swirling around of a lot of players abusing recreational drugs at the time. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go from here. It's going to be interesting to see what action the Capitals take. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts below, and I'll have some more videos for you very, very soon.